All right, world, what's going on? Welcome to the first In the Pocket podcast. I am your host, Soup, here with my brother and co-host, Big Mike. What's going on, brother?
What's going on, man? I'm definitely excited to do this, man. We've been talking about it for a while. I'm glad we are finally kicking it off.
Yeah, man, it's been a long time coming. So, just a few housekeeping rules before we get started. Number one, from the jump, I'd love to tell you guys that we're gonna always give our most unbiased opinions. But obviously, there's some fandom. I know Mike doesn't have his stuff on, but you will see it on. Like I have some bias when it comes to my Rams. He has some bias when it comes to his Broncos. But we're gonna try to give y'all the best unbiased football perspective that we possibly can. Season and situation dependent.
100%.
Again, hey, we're not analysts, we're fans. We love the game of football, and we're just here to talk about the game that we love and occasionally the teams that we love in the situations that maybe excite us and frustrate us. So, uh, without further ado, man, Mike, busy NFL off season, getting ready to head into the 2025 season. I feel like there's a lot of stuff that was shaken, and the biggest thing that went down. Well, one of the biggest things, right, is we got new head coaches, baby.
Absolutely, man. It's interesting. Every offseason, it's about 10 to 20% of the league gets turned over. But owners are always trying to win. Owners being impatient. But there were some huge hirings this year that are shaking the landscape of football realistically, and I'm definitely excited to talk about them.
Well, man, I think the first one that we definitely got to talk about is the Bears, right? It's the coveted Ben Johnson hiring, the hiring that we thought was going to happen for what, at least the last 1 to 2 off seasons that we thought was going to happen. Like he was going to go and be a head coach somewhere, uh, but he lands with the Bears. He lands in division. How does that strike you, man?
It was a surprise, but it wasn't. Obviously, a coach moving in divisions always like a player moving in divisions always unexpected. But with that being said, smart move for the Bears, smart move for Ben Johnson. If you're a Caleb Williams believer, which I believe he's going to be a beast when that team structured properly, which I believe they started put together, there is no better play caller in the NFL right now than Ben Johnson. I don't believe, and that's the reason he's had the opportunity to be a head coach for the last few years. But when you're as talented as him, you can kind of pick your place. And he chose the Bears, and he's definitely been putting his fingerprint over their offseason.
Yeah, man. I think I like the move with Ben Johnson to the Bears because the one thing that the Bears have never historically been is a prolific offense, right? Like haven't been something that's exciting to watch. And the Bears have kind of hung their hats on being this really gritty, hit you in the mouth kind of team that was really based on defense. But as we know, with the modern NFL game today, it's really about offense and highlights as much as some of us love defense, bro. Like you got to be able to put that ball in the air and potentially, if you, like you said, if you're a Caleb Williams believer, you got to hope that Ben Johnson can get the most out of him and get the guy that they thought he could be, right, coming into the league. I'm going to keep it though with former Lions coordinators becoming head coaches. Aaron Glenn to the Jets, man.
Yeah, that was obviously that's a dope situation. Getting to be the head coach of the team that drafted him originally of the Jets, and I don't know. I think he's going to be a phenomenal coach. He's shown again the Lions had limited players with the injuries they had historically, and he still had them competing in a lot of games, making plays. And I think he can bring that to the Jets. The question I have with this hire is, what are they going to do about that offense, right? Um, who are they going to have? I know they hired a strong you know, offensive staff and a really strong defensive staff with Steve Wilkes being the defensive coordinator. But I'm just curious to see if somebody can really develop Justin Fields, kind of get him over the hump and start to put some of these weapons. I mean, they got weapons. They got, Garrett Wilson, Brees Hall, etc. But they're going to have a strong defensive identity. Probably throw back a little bit to Rex Ryan and how he had those teams defensive centered. But having Justin Fields as a quarterback is better than what they've had for a long time.
Yeah, I think if you're the Jets, man, you got to hope that you can get some of that magic that happened down there in Houston, right? Where you take former player, now coach, and it just makes the most of the situation. I think the biggest thing that is left to see is what does that front office look like working with the coaches? I think the Jets as a franchise have historically been handicapped by an incompetent front office and an owner that doesn't seem to be too plugged in.
Yeah, and
So
I think if he gives like his staff the freedom to do their jobs, and I think obviously these owners are competitive as well. That's why they own these franchises. Obviously, it's a status symbol, but they're obviously competitive guys as well. So if he allows his team, the staff he put together, the staff Aaron Glenn put together to do their jobs, that could be phenomenal. Obviously, you want to have a good relationship with the owner, GM, and the coach. That's all successful franchises do. You go to the Rams, you see the Broncos turn around. You see what happened with the Houston Texans, the Chargers with Jim Harbaugh, etc. So that's a big connection. So it's going to be an interesting dynamic to see how they really work together as a team and they build this to exactly what Aaron Glenn wants it to be.
yeah, I feel it, man. Another massive. Well, I won't say it's a massive coaching hire, but another coaching hire. We have the Dallas Cowboys, right? Back on the cycle. Um, they just, man, they love promoting from within, don't they? Brian Schottenheimer takes over as the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. If you're a Cowboys fan, I don't know if this is something to be excited about. I don't consider this move an upgrade. And then for the defensive coordinator, they bring in the recently fired Matt Eberflus from the Bears to the Cowboys. I don't know, man. Like it just that seemed like they were trying to make the best out of a bad situation. Like they wanted certain coaches. I think they were really high on like Mike Vrabel, and I think it was really weird what they did with McCarthy, right? Like they kind of held on to him forever, and they're like, "Are we going to get rid of him? Are we not going to get rid of him?" And I think they just waited too long, so they just had to scrape the bottom of the pot for the leftovers here.
Yeah, I think about this hiring a little bit differently. It's going to be stability. We know as long as Jerry Jones is there, Jerry Jones runs the team. You're right. Like very vocal owner. He is the GM. Him and his son are really in charge of that. And they've done a good job drafting, but they've lost a lot of pieces this offseason. I think having Brian Schottenheimer, who realistically, like probably 5 to 10 years ago, was a hotter offensive name. And he just didn't say yes at that time. And then if like you don't say yes when the iron's hot, sometimes it passes you by. So he's a brilliant offensive mind. Somebody that clearly Jerry feels comfortable working with. And I think they have a lot of holes to fill. They didn't really do a lot this offseason. They honestly added Javonte Williams, and a non-biased opinion is him coming, being 1 year removed from that knee injury. I think he showed he's an explosive back, a phenomenal back that pass protecting. I wanted the Broncos to re-sign him and draft somebody, but I think that at $3 million a year was a pickup for them that is going to allow their offense to move. Dak obviously coming back being healthy is the goal. So I think again stability with that. Matt Eberflus could be a great defensive coordinator again. Like that's how he made his bones. That's how he got that head coaching job in the beginning anyway. So again, I think they have a good strong staff. Curious about how their offense will come together. What Brian Schottenheimer is going to have the offense look like. They need a little more balance. They can't just pass it the whole time. They have to be able to run the ball to win some of these games that they weren't able to win. But yeah, I honestly like the hire. I think it's a stable thing. And every head coach can't work with Jerry Jones, but Brian Schottenheimer probably can. At least keep the boat floating.
For sure. I mean, in what is quickly becoming, I think, one of the most difficult jobs to take over, just due to all of the stuff that's really been happening over the offseason, is the Saints job. New head coach Kellen Moore, fresh off of the Super Bowl with the Eagles, right? Former Cowboy. He brings back Brandon Staley to the defensive coordinator role after he spent some time with the 49ers assisting, getting booted from the Chargers previous to that, man. Like, what do you make of Kellen Moore with the Saints? I like him from an offensive mind standpoint, but the Saints are one of the more interesting rosters in the league, where I think it's one of those rosters that's aging very quickly, and the talent, the notable names that move the jerseys, that move the product, are not the players that they once were.
Yeah, the Saints are in the situation now where they keep kicking the can down the road, and now the cans, the bills come and due, right? So they're having to do a few things, restructure people, re-sign some players that maybe they want to re-sign because they didn't have the money for free agency, but they can create some cap room right now by signing these guys. So I think Kellen Moore, his outlook for the long term, I think is going to be phenomenal. But I'm sure, and hopefully, they've had some honest conversations about like this isn't a 1 year you're going to come in, win the division, be a Super Bowl contender. Like they need a roster makeover that's going to take a few years to do. This is a deep draft. They do have picks. but it's going to take more than one offseason to kind of cut some of that dead weight, just bite the bullet and get it done. But I think Kellen Moore is going to be a good quarterback there, or a coach there, especially if they bring in a young quarterback, which I hope they do. Derek Carr, obviously that injury that he had, kind of surprising, came out of nowhere. They're going to need somebody to fill in this year. And realistically, if somebody falls to them like a Shador or if they're high on Jackson Dart or maybe Jalen Miro in the second round, I think that could be good to marry with Kellen Moore for the long term. But this year, unfortunately, they'll probably be kind of competitive. I don't see them winning a ton of games, but I think he's going to be a good coach in the long term for them for sure.
Man, I think another situation that was it was a messy hire, but Jacksonville Jaguars select Liam Cohen as their new head coach. And that was a situation that kind of got weird, right? Because I want to say maybe a few days or a week before they hired Liam Cohen had agreed to a pretty lucrative deal to stay with Tampa as their OC. A lot of the conversation that I saw out on the internet and, just listening to various analysts and media heads is that Liam Cohen really liked the job. The Jaguars really liked him, but Liam Cohen was like, I'm absolutely not going to work with Trent Baalke. I'm just not going to do it. So if he's here, I can't be here. And that was the thing that Shad Khan was like, well, dang, I want my guy. I might have to let go of the dude that's been here for a while. So you surprised about that move, that they finally moved on from Baalke? And what do you think about Liam Cohen taking over as the head coach?
Yeah, Trent Baalke, that press conference, I don't know if you remember that, at the end of the season was the most awkward thing I've ever seen in the history of football, realistically. Like, sitting there, a reporter asked, like, hey, if you hire a new head coach and they say that GM is somebody we don't want to work with and, we have a different vision, he said that's something he'd be open to, with Trent Baalke sitting literally to his left. So, like, that's obviously what happened. But I think, again, like you said, brother, you described it perfectly. It was a messy situation. Liam Cohen, I'm not as high on. He hasn't really stayed at any place too long. He's been places 1 year ago here, 1 year ago there, back to college, back to the Rams, this place, that place. He hasn't really been too many places long. So we'll see how he leads that locker room. Their staff is a lot of potential. They don't really have a lot of seasoned veterans as far as like head coaching experience, etc. James Gladstone, young GM, from the Rams. I think that was a good hire. You've heard nothing but good things about his mind, but they have a lot of youth, so we'll see how that vision comes together in the long term. Hopefully, Liam Cohen can recreate what he had with the Bucks, but I don't think Trevor Lawrence is as good as Baker Mayfield is. So we'll see what happens with that, and we'll see what that develops into. But that was a hire I wasn't maybe as high on as a lot of people. I kind of felt like they threw a life raft out, and he's the one that caught it, and that's what they pulled in.
I mean, look, I'm never mad at somebody getting the bag, but can you imagine you sitting there, your boss is like, hey, man, let's go do this press conference. We're going to get in front of the media. You're thinking everything's all good. You guys are going to go talk about what the approach is going to be for the offseason, what you guys are looking for in the next candidate. And your boss, just like, no prior conversation with you, is just like, yeah, I'll fire him. If the new head coach, if I want the new head coach bad enough, I'll fire this guy. Like, what are you supposed to do?
Crazy, man. That was nasty work. And I feel like that, we're going to have a segment in the future, like out of the pocket. That's one of the things that I think is going to categorize as out of the pocket. We'll definitely drop that segment soon enough. But I think that doesn't start off with a lot of foundational trust. I don't know, as a staff, somebody coming in there that I could say like, hey, man, this guy wants to win. I know that. He spent the money doing some upgrades, facilities, etc. But that's just, he's had his back for a while. Trent Baalke's been there, but that was a little bit messy. We'll see how they come together.
Yeah, I mean, good luck to all of those people out there. Man, one of my favorite hires of this cycle, and I think this was like the big fish of the cycle, right? Mike Vrabel goes home to New England, to the Patriots. Now, if you hate the New England Patriots, you hate this hire, because if there's one thing that Michael Vrabel is going to do, is he's going to make the Patriots good again. I don't know if they're competing for Super Bowls right off the bat, but I'm a huge Drake May believer. Like, I think that he's a quarterback. He knows what he can do. I saw that they brought Josh McDaniels out of retirement, well, out of vacation, right? He's still living off of that salary from the Vegas Raiders, but he's back again. The guy with 9 lives. He should just remain an offensive coordinator for the Patriots for the rest of his life because apparently that's what he was put on this earth to do. But man, Mike Vrabel finally goes home to the Patriots. Gerard Mayo's out after 1 year. Thoughts there?
I did not like getting rid of Gerard Mayo so quickly. I'm not a big fan of hiring a coach, getting rid of him a year unless it's an absolute disaster. But with that being said, Mike Vrabel, obviously after he got fired from Tennessee, there was clear sights that he probably wanted that job, and they had him available to bring him back. And I really like that Josh McDaniels pairing. Like you said, he was getting that $5 million or $7 million a year to sit home, really. And he was staying in the New England area anyway. So having him to come back to be able to work with Drake May is probably going to be a spectacular thing because he's one of the best offensive minds. He's somebody that's like you said, he'll probably be an offensive coordinator again. I mean, maybe he'll get another head coaching opportunity, but he's blown the 3 he's had, I guess, before. But again, I think they put a strong staff together. They spent some good money in the offseason. And they're going to have probably a phenomenal draft with some of these high picks they have. So I think they're going to be in a good situation, man, going forward. And anything you know about Mike Vrabel from, players that have played for him, players that have played with him, is that he's a leader of men, right? He's going to make that team tough. They're going to be disciplined. Josh McDaniels knows how to call plays. So he's Mike McDaniels a CEO, and that's what they needed. And I think that's going to aid in Drake May's advancement for progression for sure this season.
The Patriot way is alive and well. Finally, the last open vacancy that we have for the head coach shop, Pete Carroll, the Crypt Keeper, back from the dead. Actually, he's just back from retirement after being forced out of Seattle in one of the more awkward situations of getting forced out of your home. He was coming off a good record, coming off of I think it was another playoff berth or just being short of the playoffs. And they're like, hey, we're just not interested in continuing this relationship anymore. Thanks, but no thanks, Pete. They send him off to what we thought was going to be retirement. But, Vegas, Mark Davis had other plans. And they're currently in the process of constructing what appears to be the Las Vegas Seahawks. I mean, Raiders.
Yeah, no, I think it's phenomenal. They signed him. Obviously, this is a move I hated as a Broncos fan. We have by far the best coaching division in the NFL right now. Andy Reid, Sean Payton, Harbaugh, and then now having Pete Carroll back. That's a pretty tough division. Having to play those guys twice a year, but he signed a shorter contract, 2-3 years, I believe. And I think they're really laying the groundwork to potentially have Chip Kelly take over. He's the offensive coordinator, getting him from Ohio State. Is going to allow them to have
national champion Ohio State.
National champions. They didn't beat Michigan, but they were.
This is true. Let that be known. Let the record show.
But as I know you're a big Michigan fan, but I think that was a phenomenal hire to get them back on track. And realistically, Chip Kelly's a brilliant mind. And realistically, in a few years, Pete Carroll will be 75, 76. If he decides he wants to retire, he's laid the groundwork, has Chip Kelly there. And I think getting John Spytek from the Bucs as a GM was probably one of my favorite GM hires of the offseason, and we'll see what they do in the draft for sure.
Yeah, man. Just one other note here is, I know GMs are never sexy, but Ray Carthian is out in Tennessee. They replace him with Mike Borgonzi from the Chiefs. He's been around a lot during the Patrick Mahomes and all of the winning that the Chiefs have done over the last few seasons. So depending on what they do at the number 1 spot here in the draft, Cam Ward, maybe that franchise finally gets turned around. But anyway, we're done with coaches, right? We're going to you got to pay me, boy. This is all the moves, all the contracts, insane money. And I want to start way, way, way at the top with Mr. Hey, I'm not going to play for the Cleveland Browns ever again. My guy, Myles Garrett, who had fan bases across the country salivating, praying that their team would move heaven and earth and probably the draft picks from this year and the draft picks from their future grandchildren's years to acquire them for their team. Myles Garrett has a change of heart after a massive, massive payday. I think he set the record, right? Like he set
Yeah, it's 123 million guaranteed. Uh, insane,
and
and
like 40
the average
million
of
per
40
year
million per
for a
year.
defensive end.
Hmm.
And it's
Yeah,
6 years, no trade clause.
I feel like when you have good players, you have generational players. They had Joe Thomas before. He didn't do a lot of winning, but he was there, and Hall of Famer. Miles Garrett's on that same trajectory, right? He's in line to break the sack record potentially in like 5-6 more years if he keeps this up, keeps his health up. So you don't get better by getting rid of a player like that. Even though this draft is deep, you know that he's going to be a Hall of Famer. So why let that guy out the building? They have a lot of work to do. That team has a lot of stuff to do to get better. But they do have some pieces, and I'm a huge fan of their coach Stefanski. I think he could put together an offense, etc. And I think they'll double down on defense. Whether they get Travis Hunter, whether they get Abdul Carter, they're gonna put themselves in the position to be a better team. And I think they're one of those teams that could trade up and potentially draft one of those quarterbacks that fall with the early pick that they have in the second round, trade back into the first round. So having Miles Garrett there. For a young quarterback on that defense, as opposed to hunting down a young quarterback that you missed on, is probably a good thing to do.
Yeah, man. Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett don't inspire a lot of confidence for me if I'm a Browns fan. So you hope that they're going to do something else this offseason to address that. Um, maybe you like Shador, maybe you don't. One thing's for certain is you're not going to the promised land with either one of those two. I wanted to keep it also in the AFC North, and this is one of the more interesting hostage situations, but it's a reverse hostage situation, right? Where the players seem to be holding the franchise hostage, and guy basically says, "Listen, I'm not signing unless you play my, you pay my boy Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, insane contracts. Jamar Chase 161 million, right? And T. Higgins 115 million. And this is coming off the back of paying Joe Burrow the previous year. So that trio stays intact for the foreseeable future. If nothing else, they're going to put up points. Don't know about stopping anybody, but they're going to put up some points.
No, absolutely. That's a phenomenal weapons to have. Them adding a real underrated move, I think, that's going to help their pass catching is Samaje P. Ryan. We know that he's a good safety net for a quarterback as far as pass blocking and receiving out the backfield. Jamar Chase is arguably the best receiver in the NFL. It's really a toss up with him and Justin Jefferson, and then having T. Higgins as another really number one receiver. He'd be a number one receiver on probably 27 teams in the NFL right now, 25 teams in the NFL. But be able to bring him back now. Obviously, doing that affects their defense. Trey Hendrickson still wanting to get his bag. Sam Hubbard retired, who they weren't going to be able to resign. So that's phenomenal to have the offensive stability, but they really got to load up in the draft on defense. If I was them, I would draft 7-10 players, trade back a little bit to get some more picks to be able to add some more players, but their defense has a lot of holes. But we know they're going to be able to score points with anybody.
Well, with the Trey Hendrickson situation, man, like he went on television, he's gone on now, and he's kind of made it vocal. Like, I want to be paid. I don't want to be paid top of market, but I want to be paid what I'm worth, and I want to stay in Cincinnati. Like, I think it puts the Bengals in an awkward situation where you have a guy that has been very, very productive on the field, right? Saying that he wants to be with the team, but saying that, hey, I don't feel respected and I don't feel loved by the team. And I'm willing to go play this out somewhere else, but it doesn't seem like there's like his market is really massive right now. And then maybe that'll change after the draft, right? Because people are wanting to see how the chips will fall, and maybe they can restack without having to re-sign him to major money. And having Burrow and Higgins and Chase under contract kind of limits the dollars that are available there to do anything. So it's going to be an interesting situation to monitor. Again, the AFC North continues to be interesting. DK Metcalf is no longer a Seattle Seahawk. He's a Pittsburgh Steeler now. Now, I don't know who's going to throw him the ball. Mason Rudolph, apparently, is going to be the starting quarterback. And Mike Tomlin at the owners' meeting stated as such that he feels comfortable with Mason. He knows what he brings to the table, and he wouldn't have a problem with him starting day one. I'm pretty sure pretty much every Pittsburgh Steeler fan has a problem with Mason Rudolph starting under center week 1. Especially you got DK Metcalf there. And that's a massive, that was a massive trade with the Seahawks, right? A 2025 second round pick and a late round pick swap this year. It's 4 years, $132 million.
Yeah, I mean, we know we're always excited when players get their bag, and obviously DK Metcalf was the top 10, top 12 receiver in the NFL, so that was a phenomenal trade for them. But unless DK Metcalf is throwing himself the ball, yeah, I'm kind of curious to figure out how it's going to work. But I think Mike Tomlin has earned enough respect with his winning for me to not question him. I'm sure they have a plan. After hearing Aaron Rodgers' interview, it does sound like he's taking care of a few things, but there's no reason why he wouldn't sign with the Steelers, is what it sounds like. And I think they'll probably be a good stopgap for a quarterback if like Shador falls, Jackson Dart falls, maybe even a potential Jalen Milroe. I think those 3 quarterbacks after Cam Ward obviously are the top 3 after that, in my opinion. And there's a very good chance one of them will be available, maybe 2 of them be able to pick from. And I think having a target like that, and then honestly adding Kenneth Gainwell out of the backfield, he has phenomenal hands, can run routes really well. Will help them out as well. And having Arthur Smith to be able to call plays, like Art Smith, he doesn't have to be working. We know he's like the heir to the FedEx fortune. He can be an executive there, making tens of millions of dollars a year, and he's still grinding it out. He's a brilliant mind. So I think they'll be good, man. DK obviously is going to help out that offense out. He's shown that he could play without a quarterback, or with a quarterback who's not maybe a top 10 quarterback, and still put up numbers. So I think DK was a phenomenal acquisition for them. And, definitely a shout out to Steelers fans, because I don't think Mason Randolph hopefully will not be your starting quarterback. But if he is, you're going to probably win 9 games, make the playoffs, and lose in the first round.
Get obliterated in the wild card.
Yeah.
Listen, I want to take that Steelers thread and loosely tie it and move us over to the AFC West, right? Where former Steeler Najee Harris is now in your division with the Los Angeles Chargers and Jim Harbaugh, right? He signs a 1-year deal, $5.25 million, fully guaranteed. It's one of the more interesting moves, but if anybody has been paying attention to Harbaugh when he was at Michigan, even when he was at the San Francisco, like, he loves to run the ball. And I think this is just more of him getting that team, molding it into an actual Jim Harbaugh type team, right? Like Khalil Mack stays on a 1-year deal. And they ended up picking up Jalen Reagor. He gets another shot. Lord knows they need receivers down there with the Chargers. Like, talk to me about some of the Chargers offseason moves and things that kind of interest you, made your ears perk up a little bit.
Yeah, Najee Harris is definitely a Jim Harbaugh back. He's a tough back. He can run over 1,000-yard rusher. You saw what they did with J.K. Dobbins before he got hurt, and how he was running and toting the rock there. So Najee Harris, I think, is a phenomenal pickup. Interesting signing again. Mike Williams going back to the Chargers. I think he got a little bit of money from the Jets, not as much as he probably could have. But reality is, having a good quarterback like that, like Justin Herbert, elevate some of these receivers, and they realize what they miss when he's not around. So again, they obviously need weapons. They need a tight end. Probably need another receiver to be another 2A for them. But with Jim Harbaugh, teams are going to be tough. They're going to be physical. Their line is absolutely insane. Rashawn Slater on the left tackle, Joe All as a right tackle, just 6'7". That's 650 pounds worth of offensive tackle between those two. Tough team. And I really like that signing. That's an underrated signing. One that will have good fantasy football implications as later in the year goes, and one that will absolutely help Justin Herbert in the later parts of the year when they've, kind of dropped the ball.
Well, we kind of hinted at it earlier, man. The Raiders are being remade in the Seahawks image. First, the head coach, and then a familiar face at quarterback. They pull the trigger and acquire Geno Smith in a trade with the Seahawks in exchange for a 2025 third-round pick. Not only that, Geno signs a 2-year extension worth $85.5 million and $66.5 million guaranteed. They get Raheem Mostert, because Pete loves to run the ball as well. And I think probably the most important thing that happened this offseason when it comes to player personnel on the field Max Crosby's future was up in the air, and you could tell Max was frustrated with the losing that's gone on. He wants to win in his career. He believes that he's a winner, and whether you support the Raiders or you don't, like, I don't know how you can't be a fan of Max Crosby, dude. Like, this is a guy that I want in a Rams jersey. Like, that would have been a fever dream. But I love watching this guy play ball. I hate when he's playing against us. But he signs a massive 3-year extension worth 106.5 million with 91.5 million guaranteed.
Yeah, I think they made a few moves that helped stabilize that team a ton, like having Geno Smith, who absolutely a top 13 quarterback, somebody who knows the system that Pete Carroll wants to run. This isn't going to necessarily preclude them from drafting a quarterback to develop, but having him, bringing Alex Kappa in, and having Max Crosby there, I was absolutely hoping Max Crosby was in some other uniform that wasn't the Raiders, out of my division. But at the same time, man, I definitely respect his game. Obviously, I hate the Raiders with everything in me, but they have a solid D line. Switching to that cover three, that 4-3 that Pete Carroll ran with some of the weapons they have is going to be phenomenal for that defense. And again, they're a team that needs a few weapons on offense, right? They obviously have one of the best tight ends, the best tight end season as a rookie ever. This happened last year, and they have that weapon with the better quarterback on the ball now. So they'll probably add a few more weapons, a running back. I can see them adding. I can see them adding the tight end. I can see them adding the receiver to go along with the two they do have, Jacoby Myers. And I'm having a blank, but they have a few weapons. I think they're going to add a few more, and then having Geno there at quarterback, a veteran, savvy veteran who knows how to compete. I think is going to do nothing but help that franchise.
Yeah, man. Another interesting, move during the offseason. Denver, formerly my hometown team, never been a fan. I've never claimed to be a fan. Just happen to live in the same state that they play in. They did me a solid as a Rams fan, and they signed Dre Greenlaw to a 3-year, $35 million deal, and Talanoa Hufanga to a 3-year deal worth up to $45 million with $20 million guaranteed. On behalf of many Rams fans, I would like to tell you and the Broncos organization, thank you. We appreciate you. We would have loved to see Greenlaw in the Horns, but he's not in our division anymore. We don't have to play him, twice a year. We're happy with that.
Yeah, no, you saw what we did for y'all, and y'all could have done something for us and got Max Crosby out of there. But nonetheless, I do love that. I do love those moves, right? You're doubling down on the strength. The Broncos defense was a top 5 defense, passing and running the ball last year. Our run defending and our offensive line graded out very well. So Sean Payton said already that, a good weapon for a quarterback is a good defense as well. We just talked about how Joe Burrow and the Bengals are going to be able to score a lot of points. We have a lot of questions about their defense, which obviously limits their upside. But the Broncos will be able to continue to build around Bo Nix, Dre Greenlaw, Hufanga. I think were 2 phenomenal signings. 2 signings I did not think was going to happen. And then when the report came out that Dre Greenlaw had more money offered from the 49ers, and chose to take a few $1 million less to come to the Broncos, says a lot about what he thinks the Broncos are building. And a sneaky, underrated move for us. You've been hearing Sean Payton talk about a joker, but signing Evan Ingram, who when he's on the field is a playmaker. He had some phenomenal years with the Jaguars. Was making some plays with the Giants while he was there before he got hurt. And I think that tight end is a tight end and a running back or a quarterback's best friend. So I really do like the offseason we had. One of the best offseasons in the NFL, in my opinion, not because I'm a Broncos fan, just because of the growth the team had, the needs we had, and those holes being filled going into the draft.
Man, something else that was kind of trending for a few days here in the offseason, bro. Quarterbacks making money this year, right? And I think the first domino, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the first domino to fall this year, Derek Stingley gets a massive payday with the Texans. It's 3 years, $90 million. That's $89 million guaranteed. My thing is, if you're going to offer him $90 million and then guarantee 89, just give him the full guarantee, man. Like, I get it. It's on principle. We don't want to start entertaining this idea of fully guaranteed contracts because we saw how that worked out for Cleveland, right? But like, man, just if you're going to hold out $1 million, like be so for real. But Derek Stingley, he gets paid.
Yeah, Derek Stingley. It really went like Pat Surtain, the Broncos signed him early. Derek Stingley, then J.C. Horn. And I don't know why they gave J.C. Horn that much money, but um, I mean, he is a baller. He's a baller. He's dealt with some
For
injuries,
sure.
etc. But Derek Stingley, I think this was his coming out year.
I totally
With
forgot
that
y'all
coach,
paid Pat.
yeah, we paid Pat too, man. And but I'm glad when we paid him, man, because really we paid him. Then those two came right after. We saved some money. Both of them aren't as good as Pat Surtain, the deep range defensive player of the year, but they got a bigger bag because of when they signed. So I think that was a phenomenal move for the Texans with Derek Stingley. He is a lockdown corner, top 3 cornerback in the NFL right now, in my opinion. And we saw him making some plays this year, so that was phenomenal for them to hold that down. Their defense is going to be phenomenal. Him, Will Anderson, um, Danielle Hunter, like they have a good core there, and I think that we'll see their quarterback take a big step this year. C.J. Stroud didn't have the best sophomore year, but it wasn't a bad year, and I think re-signing players like that and having a strong defense to be able to build around will do nothing but help their offense out as well.
Yeah, I mean the brother was running for his life, right? Like he's as good as CJ was, right? And he had a little bit of a sophomore slump, but I want to say a lot of that was his receivers just couldn't stay on the field. Receivers couldn't
Right.
stay on the field, and the offensive line was offering zero in terms of protection. Some other notable names at corner that got paid. Byron Murphy, 3 years, 54 million with the Vikings. Nate Hobbs, also 4 years, 48 million with the Packers. And then Kyler Gordon recently, 3 years, 40 million with the Bears. Like I think it's pretty clear where the league is trending, right? Like they want somebody that is going to prevent the ball from arriving in the receiver's hands, especially when you're paying a guy like Paulson Adebo 3 years, 54 million over there with the Giants, right? Like we're just scratching and clawing right now. And this is not a knock on Paulson Adebo, but you can't convince me that he's worth $54 million. What
I,
other like major? Go ahead, go.
no, I was just gonna say all that. Like, I was a Paulson Adebo fan, man. Like the size 6'3", 205, 210 pounds, he could run. And in that system, the Giants absolutely needed defensive backs. That was one of their biggest needs. They still need some defensive backs after signing him and Javon Holland to a $45 million 3-year deal, which was a phenomenal signing for them. He's a weapon. That guy can move all over the place. But saying that to say you're right. I mean, $54 million is a $90 million, but it's also not a small chunk of money, right? So I do like that move, and there's a few other moves I like around the league, but shout out to them for getting their bag, man.
Man, I want to stay with the Giants for half a second, bro. What are they doing at quarterback? It seems like they're just bringing on anybody in off the street. You have Tommy Cutlets, right? Tommy DeVito is still on the roster. They're going to retain him. Jameis Winston, who is always going to be good for a soundbite or two during the season, and Mr. Unlimited Russell Wilson gets another turn. I'm not confident in any of those guys under center. And do you think that a quarterback could still be in play for them in the 2025 draft? I don't want to get too ahead of us talking about the draft, but do you think even with those three in the room that they could still be looking?
Yeah, I absolutely think they should, right? Especially because of how deep this draft is. There's going to be some of these player positions like maybe receiver, tight end, D tackle. D tackle is a D line is a strong position this year. Offensive line has a few pieces as well. Running back has a lot of big time players, so I think that can push some quarterbacks down the board, or maybe will push some quarterbacks up the board, depending on how you look at it, right? So they absolutely should be in the mix for that. Now, I do think that Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston can hold that team over and get them to obviously a better season than they had last year. They're going to absolutely have to add more weapons. They still need a little bit of work on their line. This team, I don't know, just watching that Hard Knocks their offseason, man, like letting Saquon go, seeing how some of that decision making went. I think they're just fighting for their lives right now. Again, I think those two quarterbacks or veteran presences will be good. That's going to be the most entertaining quarterback room in the NFL. The sound bites are going to come out of that. And I think a young quarterback being there is something that they should do, and that will allow them to really set that quarterback, allow him to become a professional, learn for a year behind those two, and maybe even beat those two out. Like Russell Wilson was a 3rd-round pick. He beat out, a quarterback that got highly paid to win his job. Same thing could happen there as well. But if I was them, they need a lot of help. Honestly, they have needs all over the field. But sure enough, that quarterback room to save his job, Brian Daboll, I think, is a phenomenal mind. So I think this could help save his job, and then hopefully they draft a quarterback that they can develop in the long term as well.
Yeah, I think the seat is definitely hot there for him and Joe Stone. I think they got to get it done. They got to get to the playoffs this year and possibly at least win a wild card match to retain the job of Daboll there. Another big quarterback move. I can't believe I missed this one, but they had a couple of moves. Seattle Seahawks, Sam Darnold off the back of a resurrection season in Minnesota. Let's just pretend like the last two games of the season never happened. He signs a 3-year, $100 million deal with $55 million guaranteed, 37.5 million in 1 year. The deal is 3 years on paper, but it is structured basically like a 1 year deal, so they can get out of it with minimal impact to them after that. He seems to be the heir apparent. Maybe they take somebody in the later rounds. But one of the more interesting moves slash heartbreaking moves for me as a Rams fan is Cooper Kupp comes home to the state of Washington, signing a 3-year, $45 million deal with the Seattle Seahawks as well, joining former teammate Ernest Jones, who also re-signed with them on a 3-year, $33 million deal with 15 million guaranteed. It looks like McDonald's building something up there. As a Rams fan, like I'm sad to see Cooper go because of everything that he meant to our locker room. But I'm glad like somebody else is giving him a chance to still play because he believes that he can still play. Like I wish him well, except for when he's going against the Rams. I hope he stays healthy, but not too healthy. But that's just me being salty. And it's the same thing with Ernest, man. Like those are two guys that balled out for us. I thought the Sam Darnold signing was like super, super interesting. And there was a lot of controversy, right? Like they really pushed the Vikings to the brink with this one. Hey, are you going to pay him? Do you move on to JJ? And if you move off of Sam Darnold and JJ doesn't shake out, then what are you going to do? Because who else is in that room? Like there's still a lot of stuff that's going on there with Minnesota. But enough about Minnesota. Talk to me what you think about these new look Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, I really do like having Sam Darnold in that quarterback room. It really seemed like when you get with a phenomenal offensive coach that can jumpstart some of these people's careers. We saw that with Baker Mayfield as well, leaving the Browns and being able to end up balling out with the Bucks after his stop. So again, I think this is something that'll be really stable for them, and having Cooper Kupp there is going to do nothing but give him an easy out. And they obviously, after losing DK Metcalf, after losing Tyler Lockett, they need to add some more weapons. Cooper Kupp's a phenomenal one to add. Marquez Valdez Scantling is a good third option realistically for that team. So I think they have I think one of the underrated moves they had is DeMarcus Lawrence. So signing him on that line, man. So I think they had a really and Jaron Reed, resigning Jaron Reed. So like they had a really good offseason. I'm interested to see how these pieces fit. They had a little inconsistency as a team last year, not just on the offense, but as a team in general. So I think some of these moves will help fill some of that gap, and they'll be competitive. That NFC West didn't get any easier this year.
Yeah, keeping it with the NFC West, I'm going to talk about my Rams, not just because I'm a Rams fan, but they ended up signing one of the biggest names in free agency, one of the biggest free agents on the market, Devontae Adams. I never saw this coming. I was too busy crying tears over Cooper Kupp leaving us. But if Cooper Kupp's going to leave and you want to sell me on, hey, we have a plan going forward, bringing in Devontae Adams is a good way to salve that wound, right? Like it's a good way to smooth it over with the fan base is to bring in a guy like Devontae, who similar in age to Cooper, but has been able to stay on the field and be healthy. And he's still he's one of the best route runners and his hands are still incredible. He's not going to take the top off of a defense, but he is sneaky fast, right? Like he can get on top of you before you know what's going on. So I really like that move. I like them signing Alaric Jackson, who was a former undrafted free agent. He's kind of worked his way into the rotation over the last few years. Got a chance to start this year. did some starting for us last year. A really well-deserved payday. He's one of the better left tackles in the league. I won't say that he's like top 5, but he's probably right there in that 12 to probably like that 12 to 8 range at the left tackle. And then I think one of the biggest signings that they made that's not a big household name for a lot of people, but Puna Ford coming over from the Chargers, right? Just a massive human being that just eats runs for a living. I think that was probably one of the better underrated signings that they have. 3 years, $29.6 million.
Yeah, I'll start backwards with the Puna Ford signing. That's just making a strength already stronger. Obviously, Jared Verse and having his defensive rookie of the year, and then other D tackle y'all got from Florida State. I'm having a brain fart.
Braden Fisk.
Braden Fisk, like a straight dog, man. So I think adding Puna Ford to that is a skill set that those two didn't have as just a sole run stopper, right? Those two really do a good job. They can stop the run. That's not what they're known for, right? They're known more for rushing the passer, but being able to have Puna Ford, a big body that was honestly somebody I was hoping the Broncos would sign. That was somebody that I think they went after and they weren't able to land him. But Devontae Adams is the best Cooper Kupp replacement you could possibly have. And then being able to honestly get Matt Stafford back because his future was in doubt, right? There was talk of him retiring or the Rams potentially trading him. But having him come back, having Devontae Adams come there, Alaric Jackson gives us some stability, allow them to really take a best player available approach realistically. Obviously, we know they still need a corner. They still need a linebacker, obviously, after losing the linebacker they lost to the in division, right? So they need a few pieces. But with that being said, man, like Devontae Adams is a phenomenal replacement. Matt Stafford still a top 10 quarterback. He has a gun, and then honestly having Jimmy Garoppolo as a backup option if he does need to step in for a game or two for Matt Stafford, I think is phenomenal as well. And I'm a big fan of Sean McVay. I'm a huge fan of your head coach. How he goes about building a team. You guys have one of the best GMs in the league, so I think you guys will have a successful year, potentially win that division.
Well, I want to kind of wrap it up with some of these moves, man. Obviously, there are way too many moves that happened this offseason for us to touch on all of them. Is there any big deals, re-signings, trades, anything that you think that I missed here, Mike, that you just like, hey, we have to talk about this?
Well, this one, too, again, is in your division as well, but Calais Campbell, consummate professional. He gets $5.5 million to go to the Cardinals. Dalvin Tomlinson going to the Cardinals, right? They're really building that defense. Or re-signing. The Broncos traded Baron Bryan to them, and he went there and balled, right? We had a lot of depth at edge, so I think and then adding Josh Sweat. So like, I really do like what the Cardinals added on defense this year. In this offseason, again, not one big name, but a collection of people. And I'm a huge Calais Campbell fan. And then again, shout out to Trey McBride for getting that big bag, $76 million extension. And probably the one more move that kind of stuck out. We did mention corners earlier, but Bryce Hall, Bryce Hall going back to the Bucks. Not a lot of money they signed him for, but he balled out with the Jets, being able to go down there to the Buccaneers, and he was stable there as well. So that's really it, man. I think, again, there's a lot of moves. People are going to say, you missed this one, you missed that one. Realistically, though, we hit the biggest ones. Trayvon Merritt going to the Panthers. The Panthers spend a little bit of money. But I think we hit the ones that are going to be the most impactful right away for sure.
Oh, man. Well, they had the annual owners meetings. And the big topic of conversation this year was to push or not to push, right? Push, tush, like tush, push. Ugh. And ultimately, they tabled it. And Roger Goodell made it very, very clear that, hey, when we're discussing this particular play, we're not just going to discuss this play. We're going to discuss having contact with the ball carrier in general and pushing them forward. Like, it's going to change rules for a couple things. So if that rule does change, and there were some pretty heated arguments. You heard, like, there were some coaches and some GMs getting into it, talking about the rule. You heard Nick Sirianni with his spicy comments saying, like, hey, I know I got at least two people support. I got, Kellen Moore and some other people support because essentially the tush push is what got them their head coaching gigs. I think that was a bold statement for him to make. But Sirianni is a spicy kind of guy. He gives us a few quotables every now and then. When it comes to the tush push, man, it's weird, right? Like, I don't like the play because it's so dang reliable, but I'm also not in the business of, hey, let's eliminate a play because one team does it significantly better than other teams in the league. If the play was so unstoppable, then the Bills probably advance in the playoffs this year because they tried to run it a couple times and it just doesn't look the same when anybody does it.
Right. No, I agree 100%. And I don't like the play. I love it, honestly, because if I was Nick Sirianni, and this is the situation they're in, either it gets over, they make adjustments to it where you can't have multiple people, maybe one person pushing somebody, they get rid of it, etc. And if that happens, you could say we had a play that worked so well, the NFL could not stop it. They had to make a rule so we couldn't do the play anymore. And that's going to give nothing but juice to that team and that fan base who we already know is an electric fan base. Or they'll be able to keep the play. And if they do keep that play as is, what I would do if I was Nick Sirianni is the first 4 plays of my season would be the tush push. I would just pick up 16 yards because they average 2 to 4 yards. I would just run the tush push 4 plays in a row, man, to show everybody why it's still there and why you can't stop it unless your name is Vita Vea. He's had the most success against that play. But again, man, I think hopefully that's a play that's there to stay. Again, player safety is a big thing, and there wasn't too many players hurt on that play. But here in offensive lineman, Jason Kelsey talking about what that did to his body, etc. The line talking about what it does to them. Defensive line talking about what it does to them. Obviously, I'm a fan of them looking at player safety, but also, I mean, get somebody that can stop it, right? That's going to bring back. There's going to be some more big boys that get drafted to stop that play. And shout out to them for getting their bag in advance.
I feel like if I'm a member of the Eagles and I hear Jason Kelsey talking about what it did to his body and any kind of like negative aspects, I'm like, shh, hey, you got to wait until at least this current regime is out before you start dogging on us, right? Like, let us have our day. We just got a ring, okay? And Jason Kelsey, that play, even though it wasn't around, like, you have a ring on your finger too, and you had a lot of success. You were able to go play in a second Super Bowl because of that play.
100%.
So another important thing that happened, a couple of rule changes that came down that are going to be 100% effective in the 2025 season. Overtime, right? We don't have to hear people complaining, oh, my team lost the toss, and if they had a chance to get the ball, then they would have possibly beat them, or it would have gone to a second overtime, or they would have tied, right? Overtime for the regular season, rules have changed. Both teams will get a chance to possess the ball. It's 10 minutes a time instead of a 15-minute like it is in the playoffs. So no more sudden death, right? No field goal wins it. No touchdown wins it. It's 10 minutes to play. Both of you guys will get a chance to possess the ball. Now, the question and I haven't dug deep enough into this, Mike, maybe you have. My question is, what happened if you're a team like the Eagles that is very good at eating clock? What happens if you just so happen to consume 9 minutes and 48 seconds?
I mean, that's exactly what I hope teams do, right? Because that team's going to get the ball back with 12 seconds, right? So, again, I think this is a good rule. I think there was more ties than the NFL anticipated, right, with how the rules currently are or how they were before this change. So this rule is going to give both teams the ability to possess the ball. 10 minutes is plenty of time to make something happen, It's not sudden death. So if, the Rams go out there and get a touchdown, the Vikings have the opportunity as well. The Vikings. So hold on. Let me. Anyway, I think that rule is going to be. I was about to go on a whole different place. I was about it back, but I think that it's going to be a good game. It'll be something that helps out. I think the biggest thing was there was more ties than the NFL was anticipating and wanted. So this allows them to kind of get out of that. Because there was always like 1 or 2 random ties a year that you're like, why did that even happen? And realistically, if there's rules in place, it would have eliminated that from happening.
Another thing, I'm not so much a fan of this, but I get why they're doing it because they want the kickoff to matter. I like using the kickoff as a time to go use the bathroom, grab some snacks. But touchbacks are being moved from the 30. Keep in mind, they got moved from the 25 to the 30 this last season. They're being moved from the 30 to the 35. So before you know it, The touchbacks are just going to be at the 50. I'm not a fan of this rule. I'm still not in love with the new kickoff format. It's not really hitting the sweet spot for me.
I think this rule is going to be the thing that makes it hit the sweet spot because a lot of teams were like kicking it out, getting to 30, whatever. But you got to think about some of the most exciting times in NFL history were when you had people like Dante Hall, right? You had people like Devin Hester, obviously the best returner in NFL history. You had players like that could change the whole outcome of a game. Devin Hester specifically, like helped his team win a Super Bowl, returning kicks, right? So I think it's going to be able to give that some teams an opportunity for that. And realistically, there's going to be players like Joe Horn coming out of CU, a few other players like that who have a return ability that might make a roster that because of this rule that maybe wouldn't have before. Or maybe they would have previously in the NFL, but with how their kickoffs have been going, that they wouldn't have made a roster. But teams are going to have to be drafting people that they know can return kicks now. I think it's going to be a phenomenal thing. It's going to make the game more exciting. And we're going to see another Dante Hall, another Devin Hester type player probably in the next few years as a result of this rule change.
Yeah. In other news, right? Expanded replay assists. It's now they will now be able to evaluate penalties and possibly pick up flags for plays that now include hitting a defenseless player, face mask, horse collars, tripping and/or / roughing running into the kicker. This is one of those things like as a fan, part of me is rejoicing because my team has been a victim of some of this stuff not being called, but my team has also benefited from some of this stuff not being called. But I do like the idea of being able to get some of these calls right, especially when I think one of the most frustrating things for me at home is like all of America is sitting here watching the same game. I jump on any form of social media and we all see the same thing, but the people that are being paid to officiate the game don't see the blatant, obvious things that all of us see. And even if they did, they've called it a different way, so they can't do anything about it. I like this idea of being able to get the call right on more plays.
Yeah, I think it's something that's going to be phenomenal. Having that eye in the sky to be able to verify, especially come playoff time, or games that have playoff implications are going to be a huge thing. But also another rule that we didn't touch on that is obviously going to be big in 2025. We still got a chain gang, which obviously is there, phenomenal thing. But we can shoot a missile around the world and hit somebody between the forehead. We got to be able to know exactly where a ball is without having a chain gang and a ref's eye. So I think both those things, again, I think they'll still have chain gangs just in case. They've been testing the chips with the balls with the UFL, et cetera. CFL, I think, tested it as well. And we'll see what happens with it. But I think these rule changes are catching up with the technology that we already have. And I don't see them being bad. And again, if they are bad, we'll know they'll get rid of them, right?
Well, first of all, I love the reliability of an index card and the chain gang for accurate first down measurements. I'm tired of these computers and these AI taking our jobs. Okay, putting hardworking Americans out of jobs. I mean, in all seriousness, though, like, yeah, first downs electronic. Like, what are we doing, man? Like, this should have been a thing. This should have been a thing. You guys have been drawing the first down markers on the game line forever and ever. You telling me we can't make technology that's going to help find out where that ball is? And I think the cool thing about it too, right, is if I understand it right, where they have the chips and the trackers that are actually inside the ball, when you get into some of these more scrum-like situations, right, like a tush push or something, or these really short goal line or in inches situations, it's kind of hard to see where that ball is under the pile.
Absolutely.
And so being able to see where that ball hits the ground, where it's actually marked electronically, there's not a lot. I'm hoping what it'll do is clean up what's happening underneath that pile.
Yeah, I think that's a huge thing because the reality is nobody knows what's happening except for players in there. I mean, we know what's happening.
Biting,
yeah, we know
spitting.
what's happened, all that. But as far as movement of the ball, there's a lot happening that we can't see. So having a chip there, I think, could help solve that issue. But again, I think that's a huge advancement. And I think chain games will probably still be around from how I think they're doing the rule as like a backup measure. So we'll still be able to get to see that in a nostalgic way, but hopefully it's more accurate. And if it's not more accurate, that we know there's a bunch of people that are continue to come back with chain gangs, and the game will continue to progress.
Absolutely. All right, man. Now, this is one of my least favorite things for us to talk about, but I feel like we just got to talk about it, right? The saga continues. And what saga am I talking about? I'm talking about the Aaron Rodgers darkness. Am I going to retire? Am I not going to retire? Am I going to play for the Vikings? Am I going to play for the Steelers? Like, what's going on with Aaron Rodgers, man? Like, he just popped up on your boy Pat McAfee's show and basically said, I'm cool riding it out either way. I want to play, but I'm also retirement is still an option. And you've seen him hanging around the Steelers facility, uh, getting some drills and some workouts and stuff in. But at the same time, he's posted up in California. Like, what are your thoughts on Aaron and what's going to happen with him this season? Is he going to be playing football? And if he is going to be playing football, where do you think that's going to be?
Yeah, I have a belief that he will be playing. Listen to that interview on Pat McAfee show if you do take it at face value, which people obviously have the right not to. Um, but again, I'm gonna take it at face value. If he has some stuff that he has to deal with in his personal life, take care of that stuff. We always know that there's a quarterback injury that does happen. An unfortunate one happens one or two every year. So maybe he's waiting out because he knows he'll be at the top of that list, right? Where he doesn't have to go through maybe training camp and some of these other things, OTAs. And if a quarterback position does open up, he could sign there. But he can always go to the Steelers, right? Even if they do draft a quarterback, Aaron Rodgers seemed like he was pretty open, at least listening to him. He doesn't want to hold up somebody's offseason. He said he's been very transparent. The Steelers seem okay waiting for it. But again, listening to it, if I had to make a bet, I would bet he's going to the Steelers. He was talking about that team glowingly, the culture glowingly, getting to talk to Mike Tomlin, etc. And I think that could be. I don't think that's going to be a move that wins them a Super Bowl. I don't know if that's a move that'll get them past the first or second round of the playoffs realistically with him being 21, 22 years into the league at this point. But it'll be the best quarterback that they've had probably since Ben Roethlisberger, which is only a positive thing. And it maybe it will allow them to take a young quarterback to learn behind him. And we saw what happened with Jordan Love. He balled out after Aaron Rodgers and Matt LaFleur helped mentor him. So maybe the Steelers are hoping the same thing can happen for them if he does decide to go there. And if he does retire, he has an argument to be that next tier after those Mount Rushmore quarterbacks, right? He is the best pure thrower of the football in NFL history, in my personal opinion. I think he should have won more Super Bowls. But with that being said, man, I hope he comes back, gets the one more year with the Steelers. And I know their fans are definitely waiting for him to make a decision.
Yeah, man. I think he really wanted to go to Minnesota, to be honest with you. I think he wanted to go with Minnesota, and I think Minnesota, still wanted him, but I think they're hesitant to hitch their wagon to him because they also really like what they have in JJ, and they really want to see what's going on with them too. And I think they've had a really difficult quarterback situation to navigate this offseason between the performance that Sam Darnold put up, the allure that is Aaron Rodgers, right? Like, regardless of how you feel about the man personally, what he's been able to do on a football field throughout his career is not up for debate. Now, granted, he has not been that same guy. Part of me would like to believe that was the Jets. And the other part of me is like, hey, Father Time just remains undefeated. So I'm in the camp where I believe, hey, Aaron's going to be playing football this year. I think the most likely landing spot is going to be the Steelers. But you're right, man. Maybe he does just wait until, OTAs and everything is done and the preseason stuff is done. And maybe, one of these quarterbacks goes down, unfortunately, and he gets to skip all of that kind of stuff and just kind of jump to the front of the line. We're seeing all of these veteran quarterbacks. Like I said, Joe Flacco is still finding work consistently. You can't tell me there isn't room for an Aaron Rodgers. And I don't believe that the quote unquote media circus that follows him, right? I don't believe that there's enough teams that are like, hey, I'm not willing to take a chance on Aaron Rodgers.
No, absolutely. If your job's on the line or you're a quarter or a team that's like, I like this quarterback draft, but not as much as last year's quarterback draft. We saw 6 quarterbacks go that had a chance to start or are going to be starters last year, and maybe you're like, hey, we don't think this team is going to be able to support that quarterback right away. Aaron Rodgers is obviously a phenomenal option for them to bring in and to be able to hold the fort down while that young quarterback develops, or he could be a bridge quarterback. If you're a Brian Daboll, I think they would really pursue Aaron Rodgers pretty heavily, is what it sounded like, over Russell Wilson and over Jameis Winston. So obviously he still has some value, and the reality is he's a starting quarterback. He's still one of the best 32 passers of the football in the world, in my opinion, right now. So he'll have a job. Hopefully he can get everything sorted out, and hopefully he gets married with the team for at least a year or two, that he can help get over the hump as they're drafting and developing a younger guy.
Yeah, man. I mean, it'll come to an end here. I'm hoping after we got the draft coming up. I'm hoping after the draft we'll get a resolution to that, so that way all the speculation can stop. But speaking of the draft, man, let's get to that. That's where I want to kind of end our show today. Is the 2025 NFL draft. It's coming up this week. Dream selling season is back, right? Dream selling season is back. This is where all the hope, all the expectations start coming in, right? The mixture of free agency, all the trades and stuff that you acquire, the draft picks and stuff that you've done. This is an interesting class, right? I keep hearing that this isn't a talented class, but I think that most of the people are just looking at this class and they're saying it's not talented because they're looking at the quarterback position and they're saying, hey, based off of the quarterback position and maybe the receiver position, there's not a lot of depth and a lot of talent in this draft. I think this draft has plenty of stuff. I think if you are in the market for a defensive tackle, this is a great draft for you. I think that if you're in the market for a DB, like a corner or a safety, I think this is also a great draft for you. So it really depends on what you're in the market for. What are your thoughts on this draft, on the overall class?
I think this class is going to be phenomenal. I think there's going to be a lot of Pro Bowlers that come out of this. There's a lot of starters that are going to come out of it. And the thing is, there's not as many, if you hear, scouts and GMs talk, there's not as many like blue chip prospects maybe that they have a first round grade on. I think the Broncos reported maybe having about 15 with the first round grade. But they said that there's a lot of people that could go in the top 10, like towards the back end of that there's equal talent or whatever in the 40s still, right? So that shows that there's a lot of depth at some positions. Again, you named D-line, safeties is huge, tight end, this is a great draft, running back, this is a great draft, this is a deep offensive line draft. So just because there's not 18 quarterbacks that everybody loves, which again, a lot of times people might not be in love with it. Cam Ward, I think, is going to be a bona fide star. Jalen Milroe can be a star depending on where he goes. Jackson Darts rose into the boards. He has a live arm. And, of course, Shador Sanders, I think if he goes to the right place, can be a beast. But I love this draft, especially for running backs. I think we have the potential to see 2 running backs drafted in the first round, probably another 5 to 6 drafted in the second round, maybe early third round. So deep there. Tight ends, there's 5 tight ends that are probably going the first 2 rounds, and those orders vary. And I really do think there'll probably be 5 quarterbacks going between the first day and the second day of the draft, those first 3 rounds, 5 to 6 quarterbacks realistically. People keep talking about Tyler Shuck from Tyler Show from Louisville. Athlete, smart guy, big guy, but he's I'm not as big of a fan as him. I think he's a Brandon Whedon. He reminds me of Brandon Whedon coming out of Oklahoma State. And we know that didn't work out, but some teams are higher on him than maybe a few others. But I think there is some depth in this draft because you even got like Will Howard, right? Imagine if like was drafted him with his old offensive coordinator sitting behind Geno Smith for a couple of years. That could do nothing but be good. He's already shown he can win with them. So yeah, man, I'm excited about this draft. And if you had to ask me, maybe like Mike, what are your top 10 players maybe in the draft? Maybe no particular order, but like Bill Carter, Cam Ward, Travis Hunter, obviously Mason Graham from Michigan is an absolute beast. Ashton Genty, if I didn't mention Ashton Genty, Tyler Warren, I think is phenomenal. Coastal, I think is phenomenal. I'm not as big of a T-Mac fan, Tatora McMillan from Arizona.
Yep. Neither am I.
I think he'll be cool in a couple spots, but if your comparisons of Drake London, and I don't think that's a top 10 pick. Matthew Golden, I think, as a receiver. Jalen Noel and Jaden Higgins, I like that receiver as well. Both of those guys from Iowa State. So there's a lot of weapons in this draft, man. Shout out to running backs. We always love good running backs getting paid. And you got to think about this, man. You got Ashton Genty, Omarion Hampton, Travion Henderson, Caleb Johnson, Quayshawn Jenkins, Cameron Scatterbo from Arizona State, All those guys have the opportunity to get drafted first through maybe fourth or fifth round and
For sure.
becoming to be starters for a team right away. Right. So I'm a big fan of this draft, and I think it's going to be real good at the wide receiver position. It's not as deep, in my opinion, at cornerback as maybe some previous years. There's maybe not besides some teams love Will Johnson, some teams have Travis Hunter as the number one quarter. Jade Barron's kind of moved up in the offseason draft, but um, I don't think it's as deep with like maybe potentially elite corners, but there's a lot of depth at a lot of other places as well.
Look, man, you know what, I am surprised that I haven't heard a lot of conversation around in this draft. Two names that I thought at the beginning of the college season, I thought once we got to this point, I would hear more about them. It's Quinn Ewers and Dylan Gabriel. And I'm not saying that I'm a fan of them. I'm just saying the way that they were talked about going into the season, I really had expected to see their names floated, but really, like when I'm hearing the quarterback conversation, it's Cam Ward and Shador dominating it with heavy Jackson Dart as the third and Jalen Milroe now creeping into that conversation. Like occasionally I've heard Will Howard thrown out, but I'll be honest with you, dude, I forgot that Quinn Ewers was in this draft. I forgot that Quinn Ewers and Dylan Gabriel were both in this draft. I've heard them talk more about Tyler Show than those two prospects, and I found that interesting. Because I do think that one of those guys, if not both of them, I think they can both be good quarterbacks. I don't know about being great quarterbacks, but I think they can both be really, really good NFL quarterbacks, depending on the landing spot. And I think because they aren't being talked about, right now on all the highlights, not highlights, headlines, I think that there's an opportunity that they really land in a good system, possibly one that they don't have to start day one and they get to learn behind a quality veteran.
Yeah, no, I agree with that a ton. I don't know if either one of them will be a top 15, top 20 starter ever, but at worst case scenario, there'll be a high level backups, right? Which we know still is huge for the development of a quarterback and stability of a locker room. But Quinn Ewers played through a lot of injuries the past year and a half. And the thing I love about him is he still competed. He still played through those injuries. So I think he potentially, he could potentially come in and would be healthier, be in the right place. Like imagine him to the Rams, right? Like you might not be able to, as big of a fan as that idea. I really do trust. I do trust Sean McDermott though. So like sitting behind Matt Stafford.
It's just Sean McVay. I don't trust Sean McDermott.
Sean McVay. Sorry, Sean McVay. I apologize. Sitting behind Matt Stafford for a year in that Sean McVay system. I think with some of those weapons could only help him out. But Will Howard, I think that's a good landing spot for him as well. And Dylan Gabriel, man, is just a baller, right? He's only 6 foot tall, 5'11", 6 foot 205. He's quick, rolls out the pocket well, has a very solid arm. I think that's a guy that could get drafted a little bit later that'll surprise a few teams. He can come in and win a few games. But yeah, man, I'm definitely excited. Draft time is my favorite time of the year. I pay attention to it nonstop.
Well, let's do a quick top 10, right? Like we've got first 10. Let's assume there's no trades that's going to happen, any of that. We'll do the first 10 off the board. At number 1, Tennessee. I've got them picking Cam Ward. I'd be shocked if they go anywhere else but Cam Ward. You?
No, I agree. I think that they haven't done anything at the quarterback position but get rid of quarterback, so it has to be Cam Ward in my opinion.
Then at number 2, we've got the Cleveland Browns. And this is the part where I think it gets tricky because there's a couple possibilities what they could do here. But I think the move that they ultimately end up making, and I think this is part of how they sold Myles Garrett staying with them, other than that big payday that they gave him. I think that Abdul Carter is going to go to Cleveland. That way, Myles Garrett is not going to be taking on all of these double teams. All the attention and stuff are not going to be on him. That's a spot that I see him going.
No, that's fair. I think they're going to draft Travis Hunter, and I think they're going to be a team that trades back up if Shador starts to slide and draft Shador, right? So I think they like him, but maybe not at number 2. But being able to trade a second-round draft pick this year, the 33 pick or 34 overall pick, and then a second-round draft pick next year to move back into the first round and potentially like a third this year or next year is very doable depending on if he slides. But I think I could see Travis Hunter there. I think they would play him at receiver. Him and Jerry Judy having a Shador throw it to him, I think could be a good thing.
Speaking of Shador, at number 3 we have the New York Giants, and that is where I have Shador going. He seems to have spent a lot of time with the New York Giants. If you follow his social media and you see him, he seems to be in a New York state of mind already. Um, I think this is a landing spot for him. I like him being partnered with Brian Dable. I like him having a weapon like Malik Neighbors right off the rip, a defense that is pretty hungry and can, get the ball back. They still have some work to do, but the thing that I like about Shador, he maybe doesn't have the biggest arm, but he has one of the more important qualities of a quarterback, which I think is accuracy. Like he can put the ball where it needs to be, and when you have a receiver like Malik Neighbors that apparently just needs you to put it in his area code, I think how much better could this guy be? We saw the monster year that he had with God knows what throwing to him. I think Shador Sanders is instantly an upgrade over anything that they had in that quarterback room.
No, I would agree with that normally. I just think with I do like that pairing. I just don't know with how they're talking about quarterbacks if they would feel comfortable with all the needs they have. Because again, they need a quarterback, they need a tackle, they need a guard, they need a D tackle, they need a tight end. They have a lot of holes. I think, in my opinion, I think Abdul Carter could drop here, quote unquote drop. He's one of the best players in this draft, but I think them pairing him, having two ferocious defensive ends, would be a good thing for them. So I can see Abdul Carter filling in there as well because having pass rush is something that can consistently keep you in games, if that makes sense.
We're gonna go to number 4 at New England. So in my world, Travis Hunter isn't off the board. He's coming off at number 4 to New England. This is a guy who's been very vocal about, hey, if a team doesn't allow me to play both ways, I ain't playing football. We'll see what happens because money talks, BS walks, right? But I think that he's definitely conditioned himself to have the best chance of playing both ways. And that's not to say that he's going to play nearly as many snaps as he played in college on both sides of the ball, but he's probably going to favor one position more than the other. I like this pairing in New England because I think New England, you could put him opposite Christian Gonzalez on the outside for a couple crucial plays, right? Big third downs, things of that nature, or, goal to go situations. But I also like him from an offensive perspective, right? That's kind of been New England's Achilles heel for a long time, is being able to get offensive weapons. He instantly becomes the best offensive target that they have with Drake May, who I talked about at the top of the show, man. I really love what he put on tape last year, and I think he only gets better under Josh McDaniels and Mike Vrabel's tutelage. This is, I think, a really, really solid landing spot for Travis Hunter.
Yeah, no, I agree, and obviously he's off the board in my draft, so that would be a great fit for him. But I think he might come off a little bit early, which would leave best player available. I'd give him Ashton Genty, right? Imagine having Ashton Genty with Drake May being able to go back at the top of the second round. There'll still be a few phenomenal receivers there in that position, but I would give them Ashton Genty. If Travis Hunter isn't available there, like in my scenario, Ashton Genty, but of course, if Travis Henry's there, that'd be a good help there. But I think Ashton Genty, I know a lot of teams have him going a couple picks after this, but I absolutely see him being that bell cow back that Mike Vrabel likes to have.
Moving to the number 5, Jacksonville Jaguars. This is where I have our first tight end coming off the board. I've got Tyler Warren going to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Like you talked about, is one of our notable moves, right? They moved off of Evan Ingram. He goes to the Broncos. Tyler Warren offers a lot of upside and a lot of playmaking ability. And I think, new head coach, one of a quarterback's best friends, if it's not the running back, right, it's that safety blanket at tight end. And I think Tyler Warren could be that for Trevor Lawrence. So I like him going off the board here to Jacksonville.
I do love that move. I think the big need that they do have, though, their defense was atrocious last year. And I feel like Mason Graham is such a phenomenal fit here for them with some of those edges that they have, some of those drafts that they've had in the past that could really solidify their defensive line with some of those free agent signings that they had. So on my board here, again, I could completely see Tyler Warren happen. I think this is like the top of his range where he could be like the number 5 pick. But on my board, I would go ahead and give them Mason Graham, man.
Mm, I like Mason Graham there. Let's
Yeah.
see. At number 6, the Las Vegas Raiders. Again, in my world, Ashton Genty is on the board, and this is where he comes off. The buck stops here. Um, he gets his Pete Carroll gets his Marshawn Lynch 2.0. Now he's not nearly as physical as Marshawn, but he has that explosion, and they put a lot of miles on him up there at Boise. And you want an every down back in Pete Carroll's system. I think this is going to go a long way into one making Geno Smith feel comfortable, and then whatever they decide to do behind Geno, right, like the future of that franchise. Pairing them with an Ashton Genty, who is an absolute playmaker out of the backfield, like it just makes too much sense for him to land with the Raiders.
Yeah, no, I agree. I love that. Obviously, on my board, he's off, and I kind of want to do this. I don't want us to have the same picks the whole time, but I think when I think about a Seahawk or Pete Carroll team, USC, Seattle, etc., they always have running backs. So I agree. I could definitely see Ashton Genty there if he's still on the board. But you also think about a phenomenal defensive backs, right? You obviously think about having great defensive back. So I think they could go back to back Michigan players. Will Johnson could come off the board at this point. 6'1", 205-pound corner, very physical corner. He's quick. He's not the fastest guy, but he has phenomenal log speed. It would be their instant number one in that defensive corner. And that's a huge need that they have. I think that's honestly their biggest need besides running back. But I think there's enough quality running back so they can get still another starter in the second round at running back, where they might not be able to do that at corner. Depending on how the board falls. So if I was the Raiders and the board fell this way, I would probably pick up Will Johnson. I think that's probably the spot for him.
Love that. I mean, I hate it for me because I want Will Johnson to the Rams, but he's not going to make it down that far. At number 7, we have the New York Jets. This is where I have Mason Graham coming off the board. I think Aaron Glenn, being a former defensive player himself, coming from Detroit, where it's we're biting kneecaps and we're going to lead by rebuilding this defense. I think Aaron Glenn takes a page out of Dan Campbell's book, and he just continues to build a really stacked and talented defense by adding just a nasty force inside. I think they have enough pressure coming off the edges. You have Sauce, who, regardless of what you think about Sauce, they having a down year last year. Sauce is still an elite tier corner. They have they have a really good secondary already. I like putting Mason Graham smack dab in the middle of this mix.
Yeah, no, I definitely like that. I can see that happening. On mine, I think after them signing Justin Fields, something that's a quality helper of a quarterback to tight end. So this is where I have Tyler Warren going, right? I can see Tyler Warren going to the Jets, having him, Garrett Wilson, Bryce Hall at running back. That gives their offense a little explosion. They still need a tackle. I could honestly see them going Ahmad Membu from Missouri here as well. But in this scenario, I would give them Tyler Warren, and I think that's going to be a phenomenal fit for them in that offense.
Well, the number 8, we have the Carolina Panthers. This also breaks my heart because I want every good player for the Rams. But this is where I have my first true receiver coming off the board. I'm not counting Travis Hunter. He's a dual threat. But I have Marcus Golden coming off here. I think we saw at the end of the season Bryce Young finally settling in and being the quarterback that Carolina thought that he could be. Somebody name me the weapons on that team. Somebody that's not a Carolina Panthers fan, name me the weapons on that team. Yeah, you most people probably can't, unless you just happen to be obsessive with team rosters like that. I think this is instant firepower over the top. Somebody that can absolutely take the top off of the defense, has super strong hands, really crisp route running. I think this is a slam dunk to pair with Bryce Young, who has some mobility, and if you get him some protection, right, he's got an arm. He's got a pretty decent arm on him. So I like this move for Carolina.
Yeah, no, I agree with you here. Matthew Golden, I think, is gives them another element to what Xavier Legette does last year, that big physical receiver. Matthew Golden's a phenomenal route runner. He's 5'11", 190, 195 in that range. 4'2", 40. He would be the most explosive player on that offense by far. And I could absolutely see Matthew Golden from Texas going there. So that's going to probably be the second one besides the number 1 overall pick that we have going to the same place. But I absolutely agree with that. And I think that's where Matthew Golden goes.
Well, at number 9, we have the New Orleans Saints, and my pick here has changed based off of recent events due to the one Ryan Ramczyk retired earlier this week. So I know this is a guy that there's been a lot of conversation about. Are his arms too short to play tackle in the NFL? This is where I think Will Campbell comes off the board, because who cares who you have under center if you can't protect them? Again, we talked at the top. The Saints are a team that is aging. They need to be able to protect whoever they have under center, whether that's Derek Carr or you name it. I like, for the time being, I like Will Levis, not Will Levis, Will Campbell here.
Yeah, I could absolutely see that with their offseason. They need to get younger at key positions. Their salary cap, they're in cap hell. As of now, they don't even have enough money to sign their draft picks on Thursday, or the draft picks for this weekend. But there's been a lot of chatter about Jackson Dart here, meeting with them and them liking Jackson Dart. I think that's who's going to go here. I think Kellen Moore here in their situation. You see the quarterbacks that he's worked with is Jalen Hurts. You've seen him work with Dak Prescott in Dallas, a mobile quarterback, strong arm. And I think Shador is the better quarterback. I think he has more upside. There is some untapped potential. I think I can see Jackson Dart, who, in my opinion, is a late first round, early second round pick realistically. But I think after that news of Derek Carr happening, it is kind of deep at tackle. It's not as deep as maybe quarterback. So I think they take Jackson Dart here, get their quarterback of the future. Gives themselves a situation that it allows them to get off of Derek Carr after this year with his injury anyway. He might not come back this year, or if he does, it could be towards the end of the year with that right shoulder injury, which is a shoulder injury to his throwing arm. So I could absolutely see Jackson Dart coming off the board here. Will Campbell, that obviously quarterback and tackle are in need, and those are two positions that left tackle and quarterbacks are key cornerstones of your franchise. If you're going to be a winning franchise, so they have holes that probably two of the most important positions on offense. But I think they fill a hole. But I think it's Jackson Dart off the board here.
Closing it out at number 10, the Chicago Bears, who have already done a lot of stuff in this offseason. I think we're starting to see what Ben Johnson's vision is going to be. This is another thing that has changed for me since we started this, just due to recent events and who they ended up paying. I'm having a hard time with this one because originally I had Will Johnson going here, but I think this depending on how you feel, and I'm not saying that I'm high on him, but I think this is a spot where this is where Tech goes. Big body receiver. You compare him with DJ Moore. They tried to do something similar last year when they added Keenan Allen. Now, Keenan Allen is a much more superior route runner than Teteroa McMillan, like just a much more superior. Like, I think that's going to be his biggest knock, is being able to run crisp receiver routes. He's really going to have to learn that. But if you wanted somebody that's big and that's physical, can get behind the defense, I think this is the spot this is the first chance that he's going to have to go off the board, is right here to Chicago.
I could definitely see that. I think with Ben Johnson having Rome Odunze, and then you just named him. There's other receiver they have that they
DJ Moore.
DJ Moore, having those two, I think is a phenomenal starting point in addition to Cole Kmet. I think they still have a little bit of a question mark. Again, they overhauled their line, but I still think they have a competition that could happen at right or left tackle. On my board, I have Will Campbell and Amron Membu. I think Will Campbell will be a tackle. I think he could play right tackle or left tackle. This is where I think Will Campbell goes off my board. This is like his floor, in my opinion. I could see him going earlier. I could see him going maybe a pick or two later, but I have the Bears taking Will Campbell in this situation.
Cool, man. Well, there it is. We did it. First show in the books. We appreciate you guys for tuning in. All of you guys that watched the first episode. We promise it's only going to get better. Just give us time to get into our flow. But exciting football season. We're looking forward to being with you guys for the entire season. The plan right now is the shows are going to drop every single Monday. We plan to have some full draft coverage, well, post-draft coverage after this week. So next Monday, we'll see you guys there. Please be sure to click like, share, subscribe, all of that fun stuff that you have to do for these podcasts. Podcasts are going to be available on YouTube, on Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. So until next week, post draft, appreciate y'all for tuning in. It's in the pocket, baby.
In the Pocket Podcast, thank y'all for tuning in.